Hey everybody, my name is Justin, and I am a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and I also have complex PTSD and codependency issues as a result of it. And today I'm going to be sharing with you here exactly what narcissistic abuse is as far as I understand, and also from my own personal experiences. So pretty much narcissistic personality disorder and any personality disorder in general, they call them cluster B personality disorders, are very difficult to um, nail down, I guess, or to, it's difficult to diagnose. It's difficult to see in people, people that might have it, or maybe some people go to therapists and they're kind of flying under their radar, and the therapist can't see that this person actually has a personality disorder. And even if they do, a lot of times they're very difficult to treat or to deal with. And as of now, people say that it's impossible to heal from narcissistic personality disorder, mostly because the narcissist doesn't think there's anything wrong with them at all. And they think that the problem is with everybody else. So from what I've been able to learn and surmise, narcissistic people, and we all have narcissistic tendencies, but narcissistic personality disorder in particular is when the person who has this endured narcissistic abuse themselves growing up, or endured enough abuse to where they accumulated a great deal of inner shame and pain that was so intense that they kind of locked it back in their subconscious mind, and they just locked it back there to such a degree that they can't take a look at their own flaws, because they fear it to such a huge extent that they might have some kind of meltdown or shame attack or emotional flashback, which they're not even conscious of. Instead of taking a look at their own flaws and seeing as that is the destruction of themselves, they lock that back in their subconscious, their own shame, and then they project it onto everybody around them, effectively seeing their own flaws and insecurities and their own perceived shortcomings projected on other people. And this usually happens, especially with kids. If a parent is a narcissist, they'll do it with their own children. The children won't have any idea what's going on, but also it happens with adults in intimate relationships with others, men and women. And basically, they're extremely combative, extremely difficult, draining, abusive people to be around. And they either know what they're doing 100%, or maybe they don't. I hear a lot of survivors saying that they don't know whether their narcissist knew what they were doing or not. Because to be honest with you, it's, in my experience, my main narcissist in my life was my mother, by the way. And it really seemed like she really didn't know what she was doing. I don't know. It's very hard to tell. I mean, maybe they're that good at gaslighting that it's to the degree that the act that they give, even to you, is such that you believe that they really don't know what they're doing. Like, they have schizophrenia, or they just have some problem that they just can't help. And so, that's a big trap for a lot of codependent type people like myself. It's like, well, if it's not their fault, then maybe we should just stay around them and try to love them and, endure the abuse anyway. That's pretty much what I did for a long time with my own mother. But essentially the narcissist, they have the shame, they can't take a look at it, so they project it outward on people around them. And it's an absolute nightmare. They don't develop properly emotionally. They don't have their own emotional needs met. And everything they do is designed to get what they call narcissistic supply, or kind of like they feed like vampires on people's energy, and the people that they bully and abuse and start fights with in particular, which is why there's so much fighting and chaos that's constantly going on around them. So I'll just go ahead and share a little bit of my own story here. Pretty much, I grew up in a household. It was me and my sister. She's a couple years younger than me. My mother and father were married, but they divorced when I was around 5 or 6. But in that time, those first 5 or 6 years, I saw a lot of fighting, a lot of yelling. My father was an athlete in school, but he also played football for the University of Miami, a quarterback. So, he's a bigger guy. And he a lot. It's just I just remember nonstop yelling from him and my mother, and just chaos. To the point where as a child you're scared. I mean, that in and of itself is traumatizing to constantly be hearing that. You don't feel safe. You don't know what's going on, what's happening, or at all. And then so I remember as I grew up, these stories began to circulate about my father, and I'm not trying to say that he didn't have his own problems or that he didn't have problems that he needed to deal with. But what I'm trying to say is the things that I was told by my mother and by other people who weren't even there. Those were some of my favorite people who have all these opinions about you or people in your house, and they weren't even there. It's kind of like war. It's like, wait a minute. Like I'm a soldier who was actually in the war. I was actually there, and you're not there at all. But you're coming in and telling me you don't even know what you're talking about. And I'm talking about family and friends and boyfriends and girlfriends of my mother and father throughout the years. So. But basically, I was always told that my father was this, monster, right? And my mother painted this classic picture like he was this abusive, nasty, angry man. And he was very angry, and I do remember lots of arguing. But, I was told that he hit my mother, and all I can tell you is I never saw that happen myself. I also never saw any bruises or marks on my mother. And again, my dad's a big guy. So if he's hitting her and doing all this stuff, I just find it hard to believe. I mean, you know what I mean? Like never a bruise, never a mark, nothing on my mother. So I don't know. I don't. It's because these other people kept coming to me from outside of the household and telling me, "Oh, your dad's bad," and other family members would say, "Stay away from your dad." And I don't know. Again, my dad's not setting the world on fire, but this is kind of the foundations of how it happened. How I grew up. So once my parents divorced, we thought, oh, well, so the problem's solved. The fighting's going to stop and the chaos is going to stop. The picture was painted that my father was the cause of all that. Nope. And the reason I know that is because once my father was out of the house, the attention turned onto me as the only other male in the house, but also the oldest of the two children. My mother was horrible. I mean, it was unbelievable. And most of the time, more than half the time, most of the time, I didn't even know what was happening. Like, again, the chaos came back. I didn't know. I mean, she would yell at me and scream at me, and I would have no idea what she was even talking about or what the problem actually was. And so it was very hard. I started going to therapy when I was like 6 because my mother was talking to some people who thought that my sister and I should go to therapy as kids dealing with divorce. So I guess I'm thankful that happened. And I found the therapist to be therapeutic because I actually stayed with him from age 6 to in 9th grade in high school. And it was therapeutic. He didn't, looking back now, knowing about complex PTSD and narcissistic abuse, and even just emotional abuse, the concept of emotional abuse, this therapist never broached any of that. I mean, neither did any other therapist or doctor I ever saw. But it was therapeutic because he was listening to me an hour a week and just, wasn't abusing me. What he was giving me, it felt good. It felt like he actually liked me as a person, as a human being. And obviously you don't know me, but growing up, my mother treated me like I was a criminal. I was pretty quiet, pretty withdrawn, pretty isolated. I spent a lot of time in my room reading or playing video games. I got good grades in school. I never was a drug user or drug addict or an alcoholic. I had a couple girlfriends here and there in high school, but I never got anybody pregnant. You know what I mean? I wasn't part of a gang. I wasn't, you know what I'm saying? I mean, when I was in middle school, I was inducted into the National Junior Honor Society. I was part of the chess club. I had some friends, but I never even, I went to a couple parties in my life here and there, but I wasn't running around with criminals spraying graffiti on stuff. Like the way my mother treated me and the picture she painted to family and friends was that I was just this horrible, bad kid or something. And it's crazy to me. And that's how I was always treated by my mother and then my father's subsequent wives. He was married 3 times. Come to find out also, on a side note, that my father's mother was not only a raging alcoholic, but also a narcissist in his family. And my mother's father was a narcissist as well. They're both still alive. So you begin to say, okay, I can see what's going on here. I see how all this worked. My mom became a narcissist from her narcissistic abuse and abandonment, and my father, honest to God, I think has complex PTSD also and codependency. So we would see my father every other weekend, but he was never present with us. You know, like he would, if you talked to him, you could tell he wasn't really listening. He was somewhere else in his mind, or he'd zone out in front of the TV and fall asleep a lot, or he was just interested in other women and dating and bringing us to different women's houses, and sometimes we'd spend the night there and stuff. And so I don't know, but he wasn't paying attention to us as kids. However, so the neglect wasn't good, but he never abused my sister and I the way my mother did, and he was always sort of emotionally cognizant and gentle with us. He would tell us he loved us and that, you know, we could do anything we wanted and all this type of stuff. Now, other than that, he wasn't around as a father. He had his own problems, but he wasn't a narcissist. You know what I mean? He wasn't attacking my sister and I the way my mother was. My mother really attacked me the most, but anyway, so for the longest time, I had no idea what was wrong with my mom. When I finally found the website Out of the Fog, I guess it's outofthefog.website or something. Basically, it's a website. FOG stands for fear, obligation, and guilt, for those of you who don't know. And it's emotional. That's kind of the foundation of emotional abuse in general. But it's a website dedicated to personality disordered individuals and their survivors. And they have all these great terms to describe and define the way these people behave and the abuse cycle and all that. And just going to that website and seeing all those things was so healing for me and so validating. Finally, I could get a grip on this thing and find out how to heal. And, you know, it's been a long journey. I'm not healed yet, by the way. I'm on my healing journey, but it's a lot better to know what's going on and to know what I need. And again, the therapist, it's very frustrating, by the way, and you know, you might not be able to tell from this video that I'm making here, but I've had a lot of anger inside me from all this abuse, and it always felt like my mother took all her anger and rage and hatred of her treatment in life in general and just kind of like poured it into me, into my own little soul growing up. And you know, you don't know what to do with it. I became very withdrawn and isolated and shut down. And if you read Pete Walker's book, CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving, he talks about 4 Fs. It's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. The people know what fight and flight is, but freeze is the dissociation, you know, the isolation, the shutting down, the withdrawing. That's what happened to me. Even from my own inner self, I was disconnected from that. The fawn is more the codependent type, the people that try to please the abuser and make sure everything's okay. My sister's kind of like that. I have codependent tendencies, but the CPTSD is really the main issue for me. So I would isolate a lot and try to get away from my mother by either isolating in my room or trying to get out of the house. My sister would get out of the house anyway. But so my mother, to describe her, if you know what narcissistic abuse is like, you have an idea. But she's a type A personality, extremely hyper and high-strung. She's constantly, it kind of seems like she's constantly in a state of panic, and like there's like always a crisis, even if there's not a crisis. Like if you leave a dish in the sink or something, she acts like, you know, it's 9/11 or something like that. You know, it's crazy. And then she has an excuse to go and berate people and tear them apart verbally and emotionally and mentally. It's just anything. I mean, I've even seen her. My sister and I got to the point where we tried our best to try to make everything perfect so that she'd have nothing to complain about, and still somehow she would find ways to just, you know, pull stuff out of thin air. I mean, it was unbelievable. And at that point, it's like, okay, like, because they really want you to believe that you're the problem, right? And for a while, it's like, oh, okay, I guess so. I mean, I guess I'm the problem. I mean, my mother used to guilt trip me about wanting attention from her. I remember being a child, and she was working full time, single mom, but she went back to school, so I barely saw her. So at night, when she'd read me a story to go to bed, I'd like try to keep her there for a few extra minutes, or try to like ask her questions about her day, or just ask her questions about things in general, just to spend some time with her. And she would actually shame me then as a child, and she'd bring it up as I got older too, like, oh, you were just trying to buy time so you didn't have to go to sleep, and things like that. And I'm thinking, like, I mean, I just wanted to see my mom. It's very confusing for a child. It's like, oh, okay, I guess. I mean, I don't understand. Like, you don't want to see me, or I can't see you for 5 minutes. I mean, I can't, like, let's say that I was postponing my sleep. I mean, you can't take 5 minutes or 10 minutes from not seeing me all day to see me, to say hello, and not treat me like there's something wrong with me because I just want to talk to you for a little bit and have some attention from my mother. So, but then it kind of sends the message that your mother doesn't like you. You know what I mean? Like, really, like, that's the message. That's the underlying message. It's like, oh, okay, I just kind of started feeling like a burden, or I don't know. I mean, it was very, very confusing. For those of you who have had to go through this, you know what I'm talking about. But it really messes with your head when you're a child and you're dealing with someone like this. And I've heard people say this before. Dealing with any narcissist or personality disordered individual is tough as it is, but when it's your mother, it's next level, man. Because it's just, you have no love at all. Your soul is the foundation of your brain's development and your life and your conditioning. Everything is founded on a narcissistic mother. You have no father in the house. It's horrifying. It's terrible. And they think they can get a pass because if you live in a place, you have a roof over your head, they give you food and stuff. It's like, oh, okay, like, so I guess I don't have it that bad. I guess. I mean, I am getting meals. I mean, we do have a house to live in, so I guess I have nothing to complain about. I don't know, like, you know what I mean? But the narcissistic abuse, it wasn't just a lack of love. It was direct abuse and neglect. My mother liked to constantly yell. Baiting is a huge thing. She would constantly pick fights and start fights and push me in particular, push and push and push and abuse and abuse and abuse and bully until the point where you snap. Now, that snapping point didn't come till I was like 17 years old, okay? And I finally had to, like, because it's like when someone starts in on you, you can either try to be nice, right? A. B, try to be quiet, not say anything. Try to think of all the things you're supposed to do in those situations to not escalate the issue. I tried them all. Even trying to leave the area, trying to go in my room. She would follow me. She would follow me into my room if I tried to get away from her and continue to, like, yell in my face and yell and scream and hit me. And at some point, I just broke. And when you hear the term losing control, I really experienced this in that moment. Like, my brain, because I was a good kid, right? I was quiet. I didn't ever talk back. Well, that was over at age 17. I'll never forget, because that was the moment I crossed the threshold into the Justin that we have now, which I'm cool, you know what I mean? But if you cry, like, I just don't have, like, it's gone. My patience is gone. If you're a narcissist and you come at me, you better watch out. I think, and I've seen it many times, the look in their eyes, because usually they're the abusers, right? They're the alpha dog or the dominant one, and I'll play passive to a degree. Not really passive, but just, I don't bother people. You know what I mean? I don't go out of my way to start problems with people or yell or argue. If someone has a different point of view, I'm very reasonable. I'm a very friendly, I like to joke around a lot. But if you think you're going to, like, try to control or dominate or abuse, I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it for anyone to do that to someone who's been through narcissistic abuse. But for me, I became like Blade. If narcissists are like vampires, I became like Blade, like the Wesley Snipes Blade, who would slice them in half if I ever came across them and if they ever tried to abuse me again. It's just to the point where it's almost like my subconscious was programmed and conditioned to be like this. So it's kind of a gift, to be honest with you. I have to contain it, and that's part of the reason I still lead kind of a withdrawn, isolated life now. if you try to breach my boundaries or you try to be abusive, look out. Don't try it. I'm telling you right now. I'm not the type of person who fights a lot. I have had some physical fights with people, but I'll put an end to whatever you're doing. Believe me. So but anyway, I started yelling back at my mother to get her away from me. It was the defense mechanism in your brain just for survival. That you're under attack, you got to get this person away from you. I started yelling, and so then see, that was the golden moment too for my mother. She would take that particular issue and other issues we've had over the years where she would do the same thing. I've actually had times where she's like hitting me in the face, and I'd start like blocking her, and she'd say, "Stop blocking me so I can hit you." And I'm like, "What is happening right now? I mean, why do you have to be hitting me? Can't we just, like, if you have a problem with something, can't we just sit down and talk about it?" I mean, at that point, I'm in my teenage years. You know what I mean? So they think they're entitled to treat you however they want. And that's kind of the core of being a narcissist. I mean, really, we could go on all day here. I'm trying to. I see that we're running up a little over 20 minutes here, but so I'll try to cut it short. But and I'll make more videos. But baiting was a huge one. Chaos manufacture. This is the way my mother would. So the scapegoating again. She'd take these incidents and tell them to family and friends, so that now they think I'm terrible. Now I feel terrible because I'm under such abuse and I'm totally abandoned by all these people. Your friends don't have any idea what the hell's going on. The CPTSD devastated my own personal life. I mean, it was horrible trying to get through school. I got all this brain damage from dealing with my mom. Anxiety and stress levels are constantly through the roof. Back then, they're a lot better now. But I mean, again, I've had a couple girlfriends, but it began to dawn on me quick that when it comes to emotional intimacy, I can't do it. I mean, my whole system just shuts down. I mean, I almost like seize up, I mean, I'm laughing, but I require relational therapy is really what it is. And I'm in a position where I'm like stuck, right? I barely make any money to barely survive. I'm trying to heal from all this stuff. I don't have a career at this point. And I don't have any relationship. I don't have any kids. I don't have any pets. You know what I mean? So that's a little taste of what it's like to have CPTSD. But I'm happy to learn what it is and how to heal from it. It's also infuriating not to have to deal with a mother like this and to be kind of abandoned by your whole family and to be scapegoated from your family and to have to go no contact and walk away, which is what I've done. The therapist, when you're young, the therapists don't know. The therapist I saw, nobody knew what the hell was going on. And it's like your hands are outstretched to people looking for help, solutions. In my teenage years, I got into spirituality, meditation, everything I could get my hands on to heal from this stuff. And it's been an unbelievable journey. Not good though. I mean, really, I'm not thankful for my journey. I know I'm working on my gratitude, but no, right? No. If I'm being genuine, no. I'm no. It's been like hell, to be honest with you. I'm amazed that I'm not a drug addict or dead, to be honest with you, because I've had to go. It took me so long, even to learn about narcissistic abuse, and I was out there searching for what was wrong. You know what I mean? I wasn't just farting around, going from relation to relationship, and trying to, recreate the dynamic that my family had. I was aware. I was cognizant. I wanted to heal. I wanted to stop whatever the problem was, and nobody could ever help me. I mean, it's been like it's almost been like me fighting not only my own mother but the world. And once I learned about CPTSD and narcissistic abuse, I felt so relieved because I was right. My gut was right. It was hard as hell, and I had to fight against what people were saying about me and towards me and what I need to do, and they don't have any idea. If you've been through narcissistic abuse, nobody has any clue unless they've been through it themselves. Even the therapist. I know there's good therapists out there. I just haven't found one yet. And to be honest with you, I don't have the trust, I don't have the money, and I don't have the insurance to deal with these people. So, so that's pretty much it. For this first video here, I'm going to try to make daily updates and actually start to become like more vulnerable here, to open up and get more in tune with my inner voice and to share myself with people and try to give some encouragement to other survivors to be able to do the same. because I know what it's like. I really do. Like, if you're alone and isolated and like, forget it. You know, you got these people talking about trusting people, and it's like, oh, you just need to get over your fear and trust. It's like, you know, we're so far beyond like just everyday remedies for whatever you think needs to be happening here in relation. You know, they don't even know what complex PTSD is. Okay, so we're really on the verge of a revolution here, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of emotional awareness, healing, what's happening with people psychologically. I think what's happening here with CPTSD, and I'm working on something to heal and empower myself. When this is done and I move through it, I want to make therapy, I want to do to therapy and mental health what Netflix did to Blockbuster. I want to revolutionize the whole thing, because they don't even know what they're talking about. And it pisses me off, because people really need, I could have been dead. You know what I mean? I mean, not to mention the fact that, again, like, just enduring hell, having to endure this woman with narcissistic abuse, the school systems, the politicians, you know, government, like, it's all garbage, and I've had to fight it all, but I've learned a lot. So I'm going to share a lot with you too. So that's pretty much it. Thanks guys for listening. I'm open, by the way. If anyone wants to email me or contact me, feel free to do it. I'll leave my email address in the description, and I'll have like a Twitter and stuff so people can contact me there. So anyway, you guys take care, and I'll see you next time. Take care.